I'm Jessica Kringle. Of course, most of you know me as Mrs. Claus, and we are starting our countdown for this year as we count down all of the magical days of December. This is day one, and what we're going to do this year is cooking with Claus. I've prepared 25 wonderful recipes that have been in my family for many, many, many years, and I'm going to teach you how to bake each one of them. And we have our advent calendar here with all of our little recipe cards. Now, if you'd like to get the ingredients lists, you can find them at crafterscountdown.com, and I have the recipes available for you there. But before we get started, I wanted to just go over just a little bit of kitchen safety. So first of all, if you're a little one, then you need to make sure that you have your adult figure's permission to be cooking in the kitchen and using the ingredients, and of course, making sure that everything is safe for you. Speaking of safe, there are a couple of things you want to make sure that you have on hand. You definitely want to make sure you have a first aid kit on hand, especially when, like today, I have to cut up a bunch of stuff, and so I'm using a knife. So far, so good. All right, and then, you'll want a rag for spills and a cleaner. Mrs. Claus uses a vinegar and lemon peel cleaner. It's very safe for your lungs and safe for the environment, and it cleans things really well and leaves a nice shine. I absolutely love it. Of course, since we're dealing with hot things, we want to make sure that we have a fire extinguisher. Now, these need to be inspected every year, and usually your fire department, if you take it to them, will do that for free in most areas, but they need to make sure that they're well charged. So make sure that you're taking care of that just in case something happens. And last but not least, you want to make sure that you're staying very clean with things. So you want to make sure that you have soap and towels because you need to wash your hands. You wash your hands each time you start, and then if you cough or sneeze or scratch your face or scratch your head, you go ahead and wash your hands again, especially if you're cooking for somebody else. If you have fur babies, you want to make sure your fur babies stay out of the kitchen so that you can make sure that the fur stays out of your food. So let me get this stuff put away, and we will check and see what today's recipe is. Give me just a second. Okay, so let's look at our advent calendar this year. And right here is number 1. And the recipe card is fruit cake. This was my dad's recipe. My dad loved to make fruit cake, and he made it every year, and so I'm going to teach you how my dad did that. Let me go ahead and get out the ingredients, wash my hands of course, and I'll be right back with you so we can start cooking. All right, so I've washed my hands and gotten out all of the ingredients. Now I've gone ahead and put the all of the fruit and candied rinds and everything into a large bowl. And then I'm going to use the food processor to go ahead and chop the almonds that I'm using. Okay, a little bit more. See how fast that is? That's amazing, huh? All right, and then we will add that to here. And then I've pre-measured the flour, but we're going to take 1 tablespoon of this flour and add it to the fruit and nut mix and go ahead and stir that together. And that keeps all of these wonderfully sticky fruits from sticking to each other in your batter. Helps dry them out just a little bit. And I have used in mine figs and raisins and dates and apricots and cherries, orange and lemon candied peel, and a little bit of citron in here as well. All of this yummy stuff. Oh, and some prunes. I did add some prunes. Very fruity fruit cake. Lots of variety in here. Okay, we're going to set this one aside. Now we have our flour, the rest of it, and we're going to sift it into a different bowl. This is a sifter. If you haven't seen one of these, you turn the little handle and it sifts the flour. Make sure that it's super fine. So we're going to go ahead and add this to our sifter. Okay, And then we're also going to add our apple pie spice and a pinch of salt. And we're going to sift this into our other bowl. Right, so I'm going to set this one aside now. And then in our mixing bowl, a lot of bowls for this one, don't we? Open up our mixer. Now, if you don't have one of these fancy mixers, then a hand mixer will be just fine. If you really needed to, you could work those muscles and try to stir it all by hand as well. Okay, so we're now going to put our butter. And I do prefer real butter over, any kind of margarine or anything. I think that there's a little bit more fat in it that's better for baking. And I also think it's a little bit healthier. It's just more natural. Especially if you find ones from, the hormone-free cows. So, butter in here. And our sugar that I've pre-measured. And we're going to put this in our mixer and get it creamy. So, add that to here. You want to start it out slow so that everything doesn't flip everywhere, and then slowly bring the speed up a little bit. And you do want to bring it up enough so that it flicks the butter out of the center thing that's gotten stuck in it. Okay, so now that we have this creamed, we're going to go ahead and add our vanilla, our molasses, and the orange rind, or orange zest. The recipe calls it rind. And then we're going to add our molasses. Molasses in there. And then we need the rind from one orange, and it's also called zest. So the rind is the outside or the peel. They have these really cool things called zesters, and I have also a really small one that just does delicate strings, but this one really grates it up well. If you don't have one of these, you could carefully do it with a regular grater. You would use the small part of your cheese grater to do that. All right, let me go ahead and get this done, and I will be right back with you. All right, I've got that completely zested, and there's my orange peel, and now I get to eat the orange, so that's wonderful. Now we will add this to our mix. And then we're going to beat this well. And then next we're going to add our eggs and our flour a little bit at a time. So here I have the eggs, and I like to always crack them into a separate bowl or dish first. That way, in case a little piece of shell sneaks in there, then we can take it out to make sure it doesn't get into our mix. So we're going to add one of the eggs and a little bit of the flour. And then mix this again. And we're going to do that 3 more times, so just bear with me. Then our last one. Now, I set these eggshells aside, and I will with the rest of the orange parts too, the parts that I don't eat. If you look behind me over here, do you see that silver can? That is a composter, And what I do is I take the biodegradables that I have left over from the kitchen, I compost those so that it nourishes and fertilizes my garden come springtime. So these will all go in the compost and not into the trash in the landfill. All right, our last egg here and our last bit of flour. Now, when I was a little girl, we used to get to lick the beaters and lick the bowl clean and when Mom got done cooking, but we don't do that anymore if there's raw eggs in there because of the salmonella and stuff. So it's really important to make sure you wash your hands and that we don't lick the beaters anymore. And now's a good time to go ahead and preheat our oven. We need to put it on 325 degrees. So give me just a second to do that. Okay, so now that this is all creamy and mixed, we're going to go ahead and add our fruit and nut mix to here. Right, and we'll fold this in. You'll have really good built-up muscles in your arms before Christmas is over if you follow along with me. A lot of stirring to do. Okay, and then our last ingredient we're going to add is 2 tablespoons of whiskey. It's really difficult to find an Irish dessert recipe without whiskey in it. If you have an issue with adding alcohol to your cooking, there is no problem with omitting it. And this will burn off in the cooking process, so it's okay if everybody has a little bit. Add 2 tablespoons. And then mix this well. And then we line our baking pan, and you can either use a round or a square, doesn't matter either way. We're going to line it with 3 pieces of parchment paper. Keeping my hand in here because it likes to pop up a little bit, but once you put this heavy fruit cake in there, it won't pop up anymore. A little bit in there so it holds the parchment down, and then we will scoop in the rest. Oh, and our oven's ready. And then I like to use a spatula to get the last of everything out of there. See how well that cleans the bowl? When you scrape it on its sides, so using a soft spatula, then you don't waste anything. All right, got that pretty well cleaned out. Now we're going to pat this down into the pan pretty well. And we want to leave about 2 inches of paper at least all the way around the edges. And this is a special parchment paper so that it doesn't burn in the oven. It's okay, it's perfectly safe. And then it says to make a well in the center with the back of your spoon. I'm using my spatula. So we've got our well there. We're going to put this in the oven for 1.5 hours. Now, you want to keep an eye on it, especially after the first hour, because that's an approximation. When it starts turning brown, it's time to do the next step, because we're going to be cooking this actually for a total of 4.5 hours. So you don't want it to get too brown before you put the foil on it for the next step and lower the heat. So make sure you keep a close watch on it. So let me get this into the oven. So I'm going to set my timer for 1 hour and then make sure my oven light's on and keep checking this. Right, and there we go. I'm going to go do some dishes. I'll be right back with you in a little bit. Okay, let's give this another check. It looks like it's getting just perfectly browned in there. Ooh, that looks so beautiful. But let me get my oven mitts. 2 little Panda Bear oven mitts here. Rah! All right. Just browned on top and see the well filled in. Isn't that beautiful? Now we're going to reduce the temperature in the oven to 300 degrees, and we're going to cover this with aluminum foil and put it back in the oven for 3 hours. I'm going to go ahead and trim some of this paper away now. And then I'm going to put some aluminum foil over the top of this. The foil will keep it from continuing to brown on top and prevent it from getting burned, while the heat in the oven will go ahead and continue to cook it through the center. So we're going to put this back in our oven for 3 more hours, right? Okay, and so we're going to put this back in here. And then we will turn it on 1, 2, 3, and start. And there we go. And then we'll just make sure that we keep an eye every once in a while. All right, I'll be back with you in 3 hours. Okay, our timer just went off for our fruit cake to be finished in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off and take this out. So exciting. And it smells so good in here. It smells just like Christmas. Yummy. It's a very heavy little cake there. Okay. And there we are. I'm going to turn this upside down onto the cooling rack. Remove the paper. This is a skewer, a bamboo skewer, and it's what you check. It's what I use to check the center of my cakes and stuff to make sure that when they come out clean, they're finished in the oven. But we're going to take this skewer and poke a bunch of holes in our fruitcake. Now remember, this is the bottom of the fruitcake, the base of it. And then we take our whiskey that it calls for in the recipe, and we slowly pour that in. And it's still so hot, it's steaming. I don't know if you can hear that. But yeah, you can see how it's soaked in, it's darker. You pour it slowly so that it soaks in. You can tell it's starting to soak in a little bit slower. All right, and then there are just 2 more steps, so I'm going to let this cool a little bit, and I'll be right back with you. All right, now that our fruitcake has cooled, it's time to get it ready to mature. And so when you're doing what's called a drunk fruit cake, because it does have the alcohol in it to help it mature, then you're going to wrap it in some cheesecloth. This is called cheesecloth. I know that my dad used cheesecloth. My mom said that when she made fruit cake, she used a linen cloth instead. And then there are instructions and recipes that simply say to wrap it in parchment and the aluminum foil. So again, adding more alcohol is not absolutely necessary, but I know that this is what my dad did, and so I'm following his recipe. So we have this nice and soaked. Wring it out just a little bit, and then we're going to wrap the fruitcake with the cloth. Okay, go around there one more time. And then, because it's larger, I'm going to turn it sideways and then go around this way so that the cloth covers all of the sides. Does something round have sides? I'm not sure. Okay, so that is nice and covered, and then we're going to take and wrap it in aluminum foil. Nice and tight here. This is the one I used for cooking, so I'm going to go ahead and repurpose that as well, just to give it a little bit of extra. Now we want to place this into an airtight tin, and so I found this tin at one of the stores where things cost just $1. I'm going to place that in there. Put the airtight lid on it, and then also the instructions say, just to make sure that no critters get in, because you're going to be storing this for the next couple of weeks. Then you also can place this into a paper bag. Very heavy, all of that fruit. Very heavy. Place it into a paper bag. Then tie some string around it so that it's nice and sealed, and again airtight. It'd be helpful to have a finger to place on it, wouldn't it? Just to help my mom wrap packages by cleaning my Kinderware, she would tie the knots. To do a square knot. If you watched my 2016 countdown, you know all about square knots, don't you, when we did crafting. And then don't forget last year's countdown, we did story time with Mrs. Claus. So if cooking is not your thing, then there are other ways to celebrate the days we count down till Christmas. You can find those on the YouTube channel, Crafters Countdown. So, alright. And then we place this in a cool place so that it stays cool. This will mature. Now, a lot of people will just leave this be if you like it a little on the stronger side. Know that my dad used to take it out every week, re-soak the little cloth that went around it, and then put it back in the tin. And so every week he would take it out and nurture it, and then we would have this to eat on Christmas Day. So that's it for today. I hope you will continue to join me for the month of December as we count down these magical days until Christmas by doing different fun recipes that were in my family each day. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.